All right. Now, for those of you watching this podcast, especially because I'm a big Raptors guy. For those of you who are watching your Raptors podcast, this is a face that is very familiar. All right. Pensare Basketball. This man is a wizard. He's an analyst. He's everything that you want in a Raptors podcast. Okay. Now, Rob, you are probably the most in-depth Raptors podcast available to mankind right now, in my opinion, at least. I don't watch them all, but yours is
You're very
definitely the
kind.
one.
You're
Very
very
kind.
kind.
It's just facts here, Rob. It's just facts. Okay. Now, I did mention the last time that we did a podcast, I really wanted you on because of how deep that you go in regards to this team. And so I don't want to waste any time here. I just want to jump straight into this thing. We had our first exhibition game against the Denver Nuggets. Before I get into our starters, and I want to start there because I want to bring you back at another time to speak about some of our bench. But let's start with the starters here. Before I even get into them, what I want to know is your expectation for this team is what this season?
Playoffs.
Playoffs. Okay, good. Nothing more needed to say, right? Playoffs, period. Top six.
Yep. Top six.
Perfect. Okay. Top six. This is going to be a playoff team in your eyes, and I don't blame you. It is in my eyes as well, because I believe we have the pieces to really make some. Would I use the term make some noise? Yeah, I'll say that. I'll say make some noise here, but I want to get started with this. Our acquisition last year at the trade deadline of Brandon Ingram. Okay. Your first impressions of Brandon Ingram, what you saw against Denver.
He played great. He's a much needed shot creator for this team. I think the pieces around him will probably need to shift at some point, but I'm a big BI fan. I was looking back on some of my posts from 2 years ago and I listed up my 10 favorite players in the league. He was there.
Wow.
So I'm a huge fan. Obviously a huge fan of Scotty Barnes. I think something between those two is good. Like having two 6'8", 6'9" playmakers who can, like, if people are following the NBA draft, Cooper Flag, Cade Cunningham, AJ DeBonsa next year, teams keep devoting first overall picks to try and get this type of player. Like the 6'9" jumbo creator has so many advantages, especially when they have a 7'3", 7'4" wingspan on defense, and they happen to be really smart basketball players. The good thing about BI and Scotty is they're really selfless players, both of them. You can work with this. So I'm glad that you said noise, make some noise. If basketball is like a symphony or jazz, right? Like whatever. You need different instruments to create a song, right? Like if you want to create a winning song, you can't just have 5 cellos. So maybe not the greatest song in the world, 5 cellos. You need a violin, you need a viola, you need a little bit of bass, percussion somewhere, and maybe you need a little piano drizzle in there. And I think that's the challenge for the Toronto Raptors, is finding the pieces that work around these two guys.
What do you like most about his game?
Brandon Ingram,
Yeah.
he plays at his own pace. I like that he is very good at manipulating the defense. I like that he doesn't get too sped up. I like how he sees the court, like how he maps the court. He doesn't. I think a lot of people have criticisms about him being, a bad shot taker or like a volume shot taker, but I don't think those people really watched him in New Orleans and watched like some of the offenses that Willie Green was running out there with him. He's had some really tough situations. He's also had a lot of injuries. So if the Raptors can figure out the injuries between Alex McKechnie and their coaching staff and their training staff, and they're very good, if they can figure that out, then maybe you could have a renaissance here. Like you could have a resurgence, right? And I just don't feel like the NBA community respects him as much as I respect him. So I expect him to have a big year.
Is there any part of his game that you are concerned about? Or is there any part of his game that you're either concerned about or do you think would be tough to integrate with the rest of his key unit?
Well, the Toronto Raptors obviously like to pressure very high up on the floor. They were one of the highest pickup point teams in the league last year. And so when I look at Ingram and I look at the physicality that the Toronto Raptors want to play with, the pace they want to play with, I'm thinking injuries. That's my first thought is like, oof, right? You finally have a half-court creator, but you play this total grinded out transition offense. He should be effective in this, but it will put a greater toll on his body than playing a slower pace. One. Two, I do worry about him defensively sometimes, a little bit. Like his theory of Ingram has never materialized into the reality of Ingram on the defensive end. And I wonder if that's because he's had coaches who've allowed him to coast a little bit on the defensive end because of what he does offensively. So that's two. And three, sometimes his shot diet isn't optimized for me. Like I love the long twos that sometimes he's able to take. I wish he would take a few more threes. Just analytically, I wish he would take a few more threes. I wish he would cut a little bit more. I wish he would get to the basket a little bit more. He's very good at it. He's extremely good at it. He can knife through the defense. Him and Jakob in a pick and roll should be unstoppable. Like in theory, it should be unstoppable. Him and Sandro in a pick and pop should be unstoppable. Him setting a screen for Immanuel Quickley should be basketball synergy. Will he set screens? So it's just about BI adapting and doing the right things.
I want to move on quickly now to Scotty Barnes. Okay. Now, to me, Scotty Barnes is so key. Like it's not even funny because when I think about him, I always think about Scotty Barnes like a Swiss Army knife, right? Like he's a knife, but then there's a corkscrew, there's a bottle opener, there's a nail file, there's something that can light a fire. Like he's that type of guy, can shoot the ball, great defensively, can block shots, can get into the passing lanes, can pull up from mid-range, can rebound. Anything you name it, pretty much, Scotty Barnes can do. Right. And to me, he's really going to look good this year playing against guys who are going to command a double team at times, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you think his game is going to be now that you have a guy like Brandon Ingram in your lineup and you have guys who can, potentially space that floor just a little bit more for him?
Yeah, I have concerns about how Scotty fits into all of this, obviously. But it's interesting you mentioned the Swiss Army knife component of this. Here's a stat that will probably blow your mind. Okay. How many players in NBA history have averaged 17 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists through their first 4 years prior to the age of 23?
17.
7.
5 rebounds. 17, 7.
7 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal, 1 block through 5 years. Through their first 4 years under the age of 23. So we're cutting out guys like Tim Duncan. We're cutting out guys like Garnett. We're cutting out guys who were a little bit older when they started. Not Garnett. Tim Duncan, guys like this who were older when they started their careers.
I don't know, but it's probably less than 3.
It's less than 2.
It's only him?
It's only him.
Okay, say those stats again.
17 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. 4 years. First 4 years prior to the age of 23. If we remove
7.
Now here's the thing that's really going to here's the thing that's really going to blow your mind. If we remove the qualifier of before the age of 23 and we open up to any player in NBA history for the first 4 years, you get to two players that have done it. Scotty Barnes and one more player. Do you want to guess who that second player is?
Jordan.
It is Michael Jordan. When people say this guy is Draymond Green, and then people say this is Ben Simmons, Michael Carter, they don't understand what they're looking at. It's disrespect.
No offense to those.
And the craziest and the double, triple crazy part about this is I think the numbers don't even come close to capturing his game. That's the thing people complain about is the numbers. So, yeah, if I were coaching this team, he would be a guard, not a power forward.
Same.
I think that's the first issue that I have with how they're using him right now.
I agree.
The optimist in me says they're using him this way until they can find a trade. But the pessimist in me says they just see him as a power forward. As a power forward, he loses a lot of his advantages He's a jumbo creator, but he's not a jumbo creator at the 4. He's only a jumbo creator at the 1 and the 2. He's strong, very strong physically as a
Yes.
guard, but as a power forward, he's actually normal. You're making him normal. Now, all of this would work
That's
if he was
interesting.
super twitchy, which he's not. He's not a quick twitch athlete. He's not someone who has like the quickest first step. That might be his 2 biggest weaknesses as a player right now is his first step and his 3-point shooting. If you take those 2 things out and you say, if I could take this guy into NBA 2K and change 2 attributes and just boost them up, I would take the 3-point shooting from 75 to a 95. And I would take the quickness from like a 72 to a 92. If I change those 2 things about his game, he is arguably a top 3 player in the NBA. I'm not assuming that he's going to become Steph Curry, and I'm assuming he's not going to become Anthony Edwards off the bounce. So people who overfocus on the dribble, that stuff, they're really missing the boat on why he struggles to score in certain situations. He needs space. It's the same thing as Giannis. He needs space, right? But unlike Giannis, he's not 6'11", so you can't just throw him at the 4. And he doesn't have like the burst athleticism that Giannis does, and that's not really his fault. You gotta understand what you're working with here, and what you're working with is, in my opinion, a top 20 player in the NBA who's playing out of position. He made an all-star team with the following 4 starters: Dennis Schroeder, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, Jakob Poeltl. He played the 2 all the time. He played the 2, and those numbers were insane. In fact, that month that he had in December, I think where he averaged 23 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, 40% from 3. He's the only player in NBA history to have a month like that, ever. No player, none, who have ever hit all the marks that he hit in that month. So putting him at the 2 was a good idea. The minute we traded OG, he moved to the 4, and I think that really has hurt him, and he has not recovered.
Yeah. Let me ask you something, because I almost feel weird saying this, but I'm going to ask anyway, because it used to drive me crazy a little bit with Scotty Barnes. One thing that I personally hope not to see this season, to me, there was a point where Scotty was too unselfish. And I love having players that are unselfish. To me, I think that's going to be the key. But there are just minutes, or moments, I should say, where I'm watching the game and I'm yelling at Scotty, please don't pass the ball this time. Is that ever an issue, do you think, when you watch
Always
this game?
an issue. It's always an issue. I've tried to communicate this through my channel. I know his trainer. I'll tell his trainer this too. The most unselfish thing that a scorer can do is score. That's the most unselfish thing you can do. The most selfish thing you can do is not be a threat to score and then have the defense load up on your teammates. There was a particular play in the last game. Again, it's preseason. I don't care that much, but a lot of people do, because he ended up scoring 1 point. He gets an early steal in transition on Bruce Brown. He catches the basketball, a little bit off target by Quickley, but whatever. It's a tough pass. He catches the ball. He's not even thinking about scoring, and he's right underneath the basket, and the defender is Bruce Brown. Bro, get up and dunk on him. What are we doing here? What happens? He passes out to Ochai Agbaji. He gets into the dunker spot. Now he's in the way. Jonas Valanciunas is there. Ochai Agbaji drives into congested paint because Scotty is there. He does the right thing. He finds Grady Dick. Then Grady misses the shot. Scotty Barnes doesn't get the offensive rebound. He tries to go for a steal, gambles on the steal, doesn't get the steal. Nuggets have a 5-on-3 fast break going the other way. Tim Hardaway Jr. is in the corner. Scotty Barnes fouls the shooter. 4-point play. Interesting point, however, of that was that the 2 points you don't get, which is the basket that you should have scored on Bruce Brown, that you somehow, gave to Ochai Agbaji. Well, no disrespect to Ochai Agbaji. Bro, that ain't Michael Jordan in the corner. You're Scotty Barnes. You got to take that. You got to be that, because every single time you pass, you lower your scoring gravity. I think basketball is all about spacing and gravity. And if Scotty's not going to score on Bruce Brown one-on-one underneath the basket, well, you don't need to be on the court, man. So the 2 points you don't get, the 4 points they get on the other end, how much the team lose by? 4. That one possession was a 6-point swing.
Yep.
So you can focus on the 1 point. If he had 3 points, you don't win. But if he has those 3 points, if he has the right 2 points there, you win. So I understand sometimes, his brain goes into, let me get everybody involved, let me make everybody happy. You want to make people happy, hit you threes and score 20 points a game. Make me happy.
That is one thing I want to see different from Scotty Barnes this year. I want to see him take a bit more command and don't be too unselfish. Don't be too unselfish, because sometimes I just need him to be able to take over because he's capable of doing it. Now, I want to move on here to RJ Barrett. All right. Now, he has been in the media a ton this offseason. Is he going to be traded? Is he not going to be traded? I have no idea what the hell is going to happen with RJ Barrett as this season gets started and underway. Maybe you can have some more insight on that, but what do you like about RJ Barrett's game coming into the season? What do you think is going to happen with RJ Barrett?
He is the most efficient driver on this team in terms of just getting downhill. That thing that I said Scotty sometimes struggles with, which is, just barreling his way to the rim. The problem is not very efficient when he gets there. The best thing about him last year was his playmaking to me. And sometimes I was wondering, is he more of a point guard than Quickley? Because I study playmaking very extensively. I break down games, every single game the Raptors played last year. Like, to some people, they were like, I'll talk to Raptor fans. They'll be like, oh, I wasn't watching games last year. And I was like, I was watching every game twice. It's not fun sometimes, when you lose by 20 or 30 points to watch a game, but you get to pick up on things. And I pride myself in being very detail oriented about this team. And RJ Barrett's passing has taken a very big jump up to the point where you really have 4 players in your starting lineup who could probably run some spot minutes at point guard for you. And he's one of them. And he's not the worst of those 4. I'll tell you that. So that's a good thing. Once again, go back to the Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes thing. Teams keep devoting first overall picks to getting jumbo playmakers. You've developed RJ Barrett into a jumbo playmaker. Last game, he had 3 out of 6 from 3. I've heard that he's been locked into the gym. He's been great with it. So, I'm not necessarily all about we got to trade RJ. I understand why people feel that way. It's partially because of contracts, but the other reason is the defense. His off-ball defense is really bad. His on-ball defense is tough too, because you have switchable players on this team like Colin Murray-Boyles. You have Jonathan Mobo. Granted, Mobo is a very terrible offensive player at this point, but you have players who can switch 3-4 positions. The 1 or 2 players who can't even guard one position properly, like RJ and Grady, they stick out like a sore thumb, especially Grady. But yeah, I just think any lineup with RJ and Grady is going to probably lose basketball games because they're just too easy to scheme out. So if RJ Barrett is staying on this team, it's really hard to have another bad defender out there with him. He needs to be protected defensively, is what I'm saying. And I'm not sure he's good enough offensively to warrant that type of overcompensation on the other end. So I can sort of understand why the Raptors are thinking, let's move on. But in all the examination of warts with RJ in New York and Toronto, I feel like a lot of people miss that he's still a very, very good basketball player.
Yeah. Now, you did mention Immanuel Quickley, a few times. Okay. He's been mentioned a lot in the offseason as well as a possible trade candidate for the Toronto Raptors. I personally like Immanuel Quickley very much. I can understand why people say that he might be one of the pieces who can be traded, but we didn't get to see much of him last season due to injury. And so it was like, how do you really evaluate him last season? There's going to be a lot more to evaluate this season in regards to Quickley, but what do you like about his game? Same question. And what is he going to be able to bring right from the jump? Especially when this is a team this year now, and you and I have talked about this before. I don't judge anything that I saw last year.
Right.
I just don't. That was a team that came in ready and prepared to lose. Okay. It's going to be very different this year. They have to win. There's new management. There's a new sheriff in town. It's not a new team, but there's a new piece, and guys are intentionally here trying to get W's. They're going to be taking this very seriously. Where does Immanuel Quickley fit into all of this here?
The theory of Immanuel Quickley is the perfect basketball player for this team. Perfect. The theory of the reality of Immanuel Quickley has been oil and water with your best player. And that's the tough thing. When Immanuel Quickley was in New York, everything was a matter of playing within the offense as a third option, fourth option, playing off of Randall, playing off of Brunson. And he's got so many strengths as a basketball player. He's extremely long. For a 6'3" guard, he's extremely long. He might be one of the fastest players in the league. He has a dynamite handle. He can navigate tight spaces. The weakness of Immanuel, he's a good shooter. He's a really good shooter. He's a great pull-up shooter. He's a good movement shooter. There's so many good things about Immanuel Quickley that the ones that are not so great drive you crazy. And everything that he's not great at is what the Raptors ask him to do all the time, which is organize the offense, create spot mismatches, map the court, things like this, right? Mm-hmm. There's a particular play that I broke down in the last game, and it's a symptom. It's a 100% like this is Immanuel Quickley in a nutshell, right? The passing is not always on target, right? So we're running in transition. We've got a bit of an advantage on them. He will pass to Mobo. Mobo forces a shot over 2-3 defenders, somehow gets a tip pass. There's Grady in the corner. There's Ochai kind of spotting up at the wing. And Immanuel Quickley somehow just winds up in that same corner and just stands there looking for the ball the whole possession. You see your teammates. The other side of the court is wide open. Sprint to the opposite corner, bro. Like, what are we doing here? You were the second last guy up the court. Scotty does the right thing. He ends up trying to go to the opposite wing. Ochai gets a turnover because there's 4 defenders next to him. But why are there 4 defenders next to him? Joe Mazzulla talks about spacing all the time. Like in the post game, Joe Mazzulla would be so funny. He'd be like, okay, so they'll be like, oh, you missed shots. He's like, yeah, our spacing was terrible. You had turnovers. Yeah, our spacing was terrible. Joe Mazzulla chalks everything up to spacing. Yeah. He's not wrong, though. Everything becomes better when you have proper spacing in your offense. And a lot of people will chalk spacing up to just shooting. It's not just shooting. Jakob Poeltl is a very good spacing center. Mm-hmm. People can't comprehend that because they don't understand the value of screen setting and efficient paint finishing. But Yak is incredible in the paint, and Yak is a really great screen setter. He's one of the best screen setters in the NBA. Steven Adams doesn't hurt your spacing either because he's a great offensive rebounder. The thing about an offense, like when I say offensive rebounding, screen setting, paint finishing, driving frequency, the cleanness of your cuts, all these things impact spacing. It's also your basketball IQ that impacts spacing. You need to be able to adjust to the other 4 players on your team and the 5 defenders. Bruce Brown, as washed as he's seemed the last couple of years, was excellent at cutting when he was with Denver. Anytime the defender turned his head, boom, there goes Bruce, and boom, there goes Jokic. That connection was seamless. He was arguably the 4th most important player on that team that won a championship precisely because, and not because he was some dominant shooter. So, yeah, like my point with Immanuel Quickley, to go long-winded, is when he's the 4th option, when he's the 5th option, things are very good. When he's your 2nd option, when he's commanding your offense, things have gone very bad.
Right.
And there's nothing materially wrong that you point to in his game. It's not like, oh, he doesn't have a tight enough handle. Oh, he's not a good enough passer. Well, last year, he had over a 3-to-1 pass assist to turnover ratio. So the numbers would tell you he's a good passer. My eye test is telling me he's not a great passer because he misses passes all the time. And the passes he does make aren't the right passes, and they're not often on target. So he has a lot of work to do to become a better point guard. I hope that it will get better. It hasn't. That he hasn't gotten that much better. But I'll say this. That's actually a lie. He has gotten much better. He was terrible in New York at this. In his 2nd year in New York, so his 1st year in New York, they ran him out as a spot shooter, a lot of attack, empty side, attack the weak side, off the move, off the catch, just go. Don't play around too much with the basketball, basically. Don't try to facilitate the offense. Don't try to organize the offense. In his 2nd year, they tried it, and it was horrible. In his 3rd year, they went right back to his 1st year role, and he was back to good. And his 4th year, he got traded to Toronto. Toronto has been trying to morph him into a point guard. I will concede that he has gotten better at it than he was in New York. So it's a lie to say he hasn't improved. He has improved. He has not improved to the point where I would rather see the ball in his hands than Scottie's or Ingram's. So he has to fall back.
What's
He
his
has
natural fit position?
two. He's a two. He's a combo guard. Like he's like Lou Williams. He's like that. Lou Williams was very fast. Lou Williams had great, ball handling, but Lou Williams was a scorer. Immanuel Quickley's a scorer. He's a score first point guard who is trying to organize the offense. He just doesn't know how to do it. And I've heard him defend his position on this and say, well, I played point guard my whole life. Yeah, because you have a lot of advantages at point guard when you're playing high school basketball and everything's transition. But in the pros, now through almost 6 years of playing basketball in the pros, no, your best position is not point guard. So you may be able to guard point guards. So the old Larry Brown code of you are who you guard. In that sense, yeah, you are a point guard. But you need to get off the basketball. You need to allow somebody who has a better understanding. The problem with this, and this is kind of like the mess of Immanuel Quickley, is he's also the best possible person to have the ball because he's the best pull-up shooter on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Pull-up shooting creates constant gravity. Deep shooting creates constant gravity. So I understand Darko's idea of putting the ball in his hands because he is the one player that you cannot ignore coming down the court at 28 feet. You can't because he can pull. Scottie can't pull. Ingram won't pull. Jakob can't pull. Like RJ can't pull. So putting the ball in his hands makes sense from that scoring perspective. But from the what's the first read? Who do you make it to? How do you spot the advantages? How do you see the hole in the defense? He doesn't see it. But Ingram and Scottie do. So I'm saying it's a trade-off. It's like, would you rather put the ball in a weaker ball handler's hand, a slower player's hands, a worse shooter's hands, who can actually see the play, see above the play from a height, of 6'9", like Ingram or Barnes?
Mm-hmm.
Or would you rather put the ball in the hands of the player that teams have to pick up at a really, really high point?
It would be interesting to see Barnes at point guard a little bit. Sure. Because he's really caused some mismatches in the past. And we can leave that for another day, but I thought that would be interesting now that you mentioned that about Immanuel Quickley. Now, I did hear you mention Darko Rajakovic.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any concerns with his coaching style at all with this current group that we have?
No, I don't know yet. We've never had Darko here trying to win basketball games. So,
good point.
It's fair to say everything he's been asked to do, he's done exceptionally well, right? He was asked to get Scottie to expand his game. And last year, Scottie expanded his game. He was willing to take shots he was never willing to take under Nick Nurse.
Yes, very happy about that.
Scottie became an all-star under Darko in his first year, right? That was a good thing. The young players have gotten better. The vibes are immaculate. Everyone seems to get along. I haven't heard a single thing about this guy's upset that he doesn't have a contract, blah, blah, blah. Everything's handled in-house. Darko has a rule, when he's dealing with players, which is that you can't complain about a player to me unless that player is in the room. Have you heard of this rule?
I have not.
It's a great rule. So if Scotty Barnes has an issue with Immanuel Quickley, or if Immanuel Quickley has an issue with Brandon Ingram, so Immanuel Quickley comes up and be like, hey, coach, I want to talk to you about Ingram. Darko will be like, hang on one sec, quick. BI, come here. Let's talk.
That's a great rule.
It is a great rule. In any company that I'm going to run for the rest of my life, I'm having that rule. I am not entertaining you having, and I work for companies, occasionally now, and they'll ask me to talk about my coworkers, and I will be like, you know what? There's this coach in Toronto, and he says I can't do that.
It's a great rule because if you don't do that, that's how the rumors start. And then the rumors are going to start to divide you, and then everything is going to be effed up.
Absolutely. And chemistry is so important and so delicate, right? And I just love how this team plays selflessly, plays together. There's probably a lot of guys on this team who feel like they could use more minutes, right? There's a couple of guys who are extension eligible who don't have extensions. Ochai Agbaji, RJ Barrett. Massaging egos is so difficult. We saw this with Nick Nurse, right? We saw this, right? You had a lot of people who were very divided, very, very, very divided. You're close to the team, so you definitely saw it firsthand in 2022.
Oh yeah,
You know, it was just bad vibes. You got guys doing podcasts,
very.
bending, their exactly, and that's not good. From a psychological perspective, I think fans probably need to step back and look at who you're drafting. When you draft a Colin Murray Boyles, when you draft a Jacoby Walter, when you draft a Grady Dick, you're drafting children. I know they're 6'7", 6'8", and they're playing, awesome basketball, whatever. They're 18, 19, 20 years old. I understand that legally that's an adult, but in a lot of ways, these are extremely specialized children. They have played basketball their whole lives. They have missed out on a ton of things that would otherwise, form the overall experience. They're specialized, right? And so in one way, they're very mature, extremely mature. They have discipline that people who are 19 and 20 don't have. They have talent that people who are 19 and 20 don't have. They have paychecks that people who are 19 and 20 don't have. But at the same time, this is their first time away from home. This is their first time away from their family for a long period of time. They're in a new country. You need proper guidance. You need a stress-free environment. You need a place where they feel safe. And when I started talking about, like safety, people are like, "Oh, that's that's woo wei stuff, man. That's soft." No, it's not soft. If you tried to learn in a stressful environment when someone it's not fun. And it's not even that it's not fun, it's just not effective. Your
Right.
memory is hurt, your sleep cycle is hurt. When you're not happy, you're not growing properly, in my opinion. Like, you learn best when
Yeah,
you're in a
100%.
safe environment. So creating that type of environment where, questions, right? Like, I'm a film director. I
Mhm.
walk onto a film set. I know I'm on a good film set when there's conversations, questions, when I hear people communicating. That's when I know I'm in a good film set. When I walk onto a film set and it's not, like, the camera's not rolling and I hear dead silence and everyone's on their phone, I know this is a really messed up, I know it's a messed up film set. And probably it's messed up because the director yelled at a PA at some point for asking a stupid question and everyone just like, okay, no.
Mhm.
So the base building blocks of good team that wins playoff round, wins 2 playoff rounds, goes to win a championship, it's really not that complicated. It starts with communication. Because when you get beat and you need help, you need to communicate. When somebody gets beat and when someone is about to get set a screen, to put it in high school terms, you need to call that screen out,
Yeah.
right? So the fabric of trust, if you keep threading away at it, if I keep getting an early steal and you won't throw me the basketball, I'm gonna stop stealing. If I keep coming up and trying to set a screen for you and you keep going early, forcing me to catch offensive foul after offensive foul, and we don't have a way to talk about it because our coach has not facilitated the conflict resolution and the stuff we were talking about before we went on air, like the debate as opposed to the yelling. Like, if we don't have a way to solve our problems, we're just going to have endless problems that we don't solve. And at some point it's going to burst and we're going to stop talking and we're going to get really bad team chemistry.
Yeah, it's important that you mention these things because as a guy who's coached for over a decade, all different ages, by the way, as well. All of that stuff is so important, and I think it's good for the listeners to hear because a lot of the time, and we've spoken about this once again before. A lot of the time is when you look at these players and you watch them on the court as professional athletes.
Right.
A lot of the time, we just look at them as robots. Like
Right.
they're not people. They're not human. They go out there, they play a sport, money goes into their bank account, and they keep it pushing. That's how a lot of the general audience looks at these guys. And so when I hear you talk about chemistry and making sure that you can communicate with each other effectively so that the vibes are good and the morale is high, all of that stuff is so important that the general public just does not understand.
Yeah. I used to say And the other day I had this. I think you probably saw it in this interview with John McCall, who's the trainer
Yeah.
for AJ DeBonsa and Amen Thompson, Asar Thompson.
Mhm.
Such an amazing conversation. I was like a child. Like I was just like so excited. I'm a 37-year-old guy, and I was just like wowed by the fact that a trainer is there trying to study fascia and
Mhm.
neuroscience and psychology to give his players like a 1% edge. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for things like impulse control, decision making, doesn't fully develop until 25. Okay. You're drafting people sometimes 6 years before that.
Yeah.
Brain development in stressful environments is underdevelopment. So if you want to, there was this period of Raptors history that people will remember very fondly, which is the We the North era, right?
Mhm.
That era from 2013 to 2019 started with a 3-word phrase. Do you remember that phrase?
Pound the rock.
It was pound the rock.
Yeah.
The win every day, or whatever Darko's saying right now, is pound the rock rebranded. It's a remix. It's the same thing. I think Masai figured out what worked. Now, Dwayne Casey is a lot of things. Stubborn, at times, very stubborn. I've had a chance to meet Dwayne Casey. Like, I have a lot of respect for Dwayne Casey, the person. Had a
Mhm.
lot of questions about Dwayne Casey, the playoff tactician. But that being said, you cannot deny the best of Fred, the best of Pascal, the best of OG, the best of DeMar, the best of JV, the best of DeLon. He got the best out of everybody. How?
Mhm.
It's the same thing. It's this team chemistry stuff. It's because DeMar was a kid. He's like a 20, 21-year-old, 22-year-old kid. And boom, like he's getting better. He's maturing as a leader. They set the example. Now Fred and Pascal follow. They're like, oh, this is what it means to be professional. Right now, Elijah Martin, Chucky Hepburn, Colin Murray Boyles, guys like this, Jacoby Walter last year. You have 5 rookies last year. You got 8 players in their first or second year who are learning what it means to be a professional by watching Scotty Barnes and RJ Barrett. And ultimately, if they're just showing up late to practice, the DeAndre Ayton, Joel Embiid special, if they're doing that stuff, well, then Elijah Martin can be like, well, that's what I'll do when I mature. I guess I don't have to work. So it's
Mhm.
very important to be detail oriented about this stuff. And it's also very important to think, yes, this is a step-by-step approach. And I love that Darko does not skip steps.
Yeah.
I wonder if they may have prematurely pulled this, let's win now. I wonder if another year of development might have been okay. But I understand why they felt the need to do this now. So yeah, I mean, it's curious. But again, I cannot judge you for something you haven't done before. And Darko Rajakovic at no level in the NBA has ever been asked to win basketball games. That's
Yeah.
never happened.
And the thing is, too, Rob, is that I try to explain this to people as well. Sometimes the win now and maybe another year of development is not it's not going to be up to Rajakovic or Bobby Webster. That's going to be up to MLSE. If they tell your ass you better get out there and win games, you, you better get out there and win games.
Sure.
Like, you know what I mean? Bobby Webster doesn't have a choice. If your boss tells you that's what you're going to do, that's what you're going to do. You know what I mean?
I think the most interesting storylines of this season will probably be the RJ trade rumors. Like
Mhm.
that, does it ever happen? Do the Raptors call the Kings and say, "Hey, Malik Monk, interested? You want another? You got DeMar DeRozan, you got Zach LaVine, you want RJ Barrett too? Like, you really want to mess things up? Let's, I think about thing I said earlier about the orchestra. You really want 4 violins? Let's
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
put them together. Dennis
It's a
Schroeder
good
there too.
analogy. Yeah, it's a good analogy.
So that'll be one storyline. The other storyline will be, if the Raptors do start winning, now you have some picks. You have a lot of picks. You have all your future first round picks. Do you move some of those picks to try and make a move for Giannis? Right? Because Giannis is reportedly looking out, and there's been a lot of talk about Scotty Barnes being like the best young player available in a Giannis trade. I've always hated this idea of pushing everything to the table for Giannis. I hate any idea of trading Scotty. But
So do
if
I.
you're going to put Scotty at the 4 and you're married to this idea of holding on to Ingram and IQ, it's hard to ignore that if you're a 45 to 47 win team with Barnes at the 4, it's impossible for me to argue that you're not a title contender with Giannis at the 4 in place of him. Maybe MLSC will feel that way too. But beyond that, an RJ Barrett trade with some pieces attached going to Utah for Lauri Markkanen would be a very interesting trade. I think that could make a lot of sense. Obviously, fans feel very sentimentally about the concept of RJ Barrett. I wish that RJ Barrett does work out in Toronto. I just don't think with these other 4 starters it does work. It's also very interesting that we had Mamu. I love Mamu. Like, I really do.
Yeah.
Shout outs to Matt Devlin, mispronouncing his name every single time. Matt Devlin, if you ever watch this, it's Mamu Kelashvili. He kept calling him Mamus Kelashvili. I'm like, where did this extra S come from?
Yeah.
But anyways, it's so interesting because Mamu is a proof of concept that stretch bigs work with, what you're doing here. You have a lot of players who need space. Mamu is a driver. Mamu is helping space more than any player who played on Monday. That much I'll say. Like, he helped spacing more than anyone. He attacked spacing better than anyone. He was probably their best player. Him and Ingram were their best players. So if you want to look at a positive, the 2 guys you added this offseason, they were awesome. Everybody else kind of struggled. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that could be a really huge storyline. But I think the other major storyline will be if the Raptors don't perform well, Darko Rajakovic, Bobby Webster, are their jobs safe?
Okay, so
what point do you change?
I'm glad you went there because I want to end it off on that as well, right? No Masai Ujiri now. Bobby Webster is at the helm. How should I phrase this question? What do you think the difference is going to be with a Masai Ujiri-led organization and a Bobby Webster-led organization?
Well, there's a lot more hope with Masai. I'll tell you that. He is such a gifted public speaker. I've learned so much from Masai. Like, I've attended a couple of his lectures, and I've constantly found myself drawing so much inspiration from how he's able to tell stories. He's such a gifted storyteller. So yeah, you won't get that. You're not going to get the hopes and dreams.
That's for sure.
After every media thing, you're going to get a little bit more of a smug, laid back Bobby Webster, who's a little bit more analytical. And quite frankly, I'm a lot more like Bobby than Masai. So that's probably why I like Masai so much more. Because, for me, Bobby's very dry. He's very analytical. He's extremely, straight to the point. And, I'm like that. I've been like that my whole life. And I actually appreciate the people who are charismatic and can pound on the Scotty Barnes, is going to, this is the type of the guy that you dream to get, like, wow, that's well put, Masai. Like, that's some real mastery of poetry right there. So yeah, you won't get that. The other thing, is Bobby is a little less emotionally invested, I think. Or this is just my read on it. I've only met Masai once in my life, so I can't say like I have an intimate understanding of him and Bobby and who they are as people. But from what I understand, from what I've listened to in his interviews, talking about how hard it was for him to fire Dwayne Casey. He was like a father to me. He was like a third father to me. He said how difficult it was for him to trade DeMar. Hey man, this is a business. Yeah, I appreciate that you approach things with so much heart and so much emotion and so much sentimentality, but sometimes those things can become your Achilles heel. And in so many senses, that's the point here, is like sometimes there is a move that makes sense on paper. Kawhi, that move made sense on paper. It made a lot of sense. You're getting a massive upgrade on a player. But how do you properly evaluate a player that's been in your gym for 7 years, has led to this We the North? How do you properly evaluate that player when you're so emotionally invested in them? How do you properly evaluate Pascal? The biggest mistakes through Masai Ujiri's era were holding on to Pascal and OG way too long, holding on to Fred.
100% agree.
Like that, like I just literally started a podcast talking about how the Raptors needed to stop being selfish. Right? Like that was the whole thing. If people can go back, I'm not gassing it. All those episodes are still up there. Go back and watch episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to about 100. We've done 940 videos on our channel. I'll guarantee the first 100 and 150, we're calling out how selfish the Raptors were under Fred, Pascal, Gary, like that entire iteration of the Raptors. So even allowing it to get to that point when you saw it happening, you needed to make a shift and you didn't. So that to me, I don't think is happening under Bobby. I think Bobby is going to be a little bit more proactive. So there's trade-offs. Masai, a little bit more emotionally invested, a little bit more sentimental, a little bit better orator. Not a little bit. He's 1,000 times better as an orator, motivational, type of guy. Bobby Webster, maybe not as big on the big picture stuff, but in terms of like getting tripped up on the emotional hurdles of the microtransactions, I don't think he's going to be as hesitant to pull the trade trigger if he sees a way to get his
Good
team
point.
better. So, and he's a lot cheaper. So from an MLSE perspective, he's a hell of a lot cheaper for the Raptors. And yeah, we'll see, but I don't think Bobby is going to have like the leash that Masai did. I don't think he's going to get to fail for 4 years, 3 years. I don't think that's going to get to happen. Like, if this doesn't work, he's on the hot seat next offseason at the latest.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I agree. Good point. Pensare Basketball, Rob. Thank you for doing this, man. I always appreciate you.
Appreciate you as well. Thank you for being such a empathetic person. Thank you for being, so open to discussing so many topics. You discuss a lot of topics that people don't want to talk about, and I really appreciate your podcast for that.
Well, I appreciate that a lot, and we'll see where it gets me, Rob. We'll see. It's just what I love to do. There's a lot going on in this world outside
What
of
do you mean
sports,
by
and
that?
so
Where it gets you? What do you mean by that?
well, I'm hoping it might provide some other opportunity down the line. Speaking about different subjects,
Well, here's the thing. I've approached our own podcast from a very controversial lens at times. I will go and dissect the bad plays of a player who scored 30 points. As people say, you're a hater, right? The barometer for me every single night when I go to sleep is, did I approach my job with seriousness and honesty? That's it. So did I do the work, and did I do it from an honest place? And everything else takes care of itself. There was a period where I think for 2 months straight, like 2 Januaries ago, we lost more subscribers than we gained every month. It was disheartening. We would make video after video after video, and we just kept losing subscribers because what I was talking about wasn't very popular. And at that moment, I had kind of a choice to make is like, okay, is my channel just going to die here? Are we just going to die at 4,900 subscribers? We're just never going to get to 5,000 subscribers because people hate what I'm talking about. And then I said, no, like, I'm not going to be able to sleep if I pander, if I mute myself, if I censor myself, I'm not gonna be able to sleep. I'm not gonna be able to deal with myself. So I continued to grind, and now, we've grown a lot since then. We have a budding community. For the most part, last year we had like the most watched post-game show on the team, and I think that's just due to the fact that we've always followed like our North Star. So it can't be about 15 things, right? And I think you're on an amazing path. Like, you, correct me if I'm wrong, you do what feels right to you all the time, right? You say what feels right to you. You approach things not from a who will be upset with me if I say this and that, but rather what is the thing that needs to be said right now. And that is, I think, the type of thing that builds lasting followers.
But I appreciate you saying that, and I think watching you actually helps me because I haven't always said what I've wanted to say, and a lot of the time I still don't. I still am reserved, and I hold back because I wonder if I'm going to offend somebody, if I'm employed by this person, is it going to hurt? But you and I have talked off camera for a bit, and some more stuff will come out in the next little bit. But it's come to a point, Rob, where you just got to say what you got to say, and if you believe in what you're saying, then you just got to say it, and you got to stand on it. And for those who like it, like it. For those who don't. At the end of the day, and it is what it is. And but you can't let people dictate what you're going to say or silence you because you're trying to save somebody from feeling uncomfortable. If you have something to say and you believe that is the truth, then say it.
Yeah. Look, I don't know if you watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Do you? Did you?
I did not. I know the show for sure, but no.
Yeah, I loved it. I've been watching the reruns, and there's this quote. One of the main characters, Captain Raymond Holt, he says to Rosa Diaz when she comes out, he says, every single time someone steps into who they are, the world becomes a slightly better place.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always kind of stuck with me. It's a very important thing for people to be who they are, not just for the world, but for themselves. When you say what is actually on your mind, you receive actual feedback for what was on your mind, right? Maybe what was on your mind was racist, sexist, homophobic. Maybe it was. Society would tell you to shut up. But no, don't shut up. Actually say what's on your mind and get real feedback on it. Now take that feedback and think about what was said to you and what you said. What we want to do as a society is get people to stop saying uncomfortable things, which I think shuts down dialogue. And I'm not pro anything that shuts down dialogue for real. Like forget the politics, forget all that stuff. If you have a question that may be racially insensitive and you will never ask that question for shame, if you have a point about a political thing that happened and you're like, I wonder if I say this thing, will people assume that I'm a Trump supporter?
Mm-hmm.
Well, now you just bury it. And now it's in you and you never got possible feedback on it. When you present a fake version of yourself all the time, and people do it on social media all the time, there's influencers who are pretending their lives are way better than they really are.
Oh, yeah.
What you're receiving is feedback for who you're not, which
Yeah,
means you're
true.
not growing. You're not actually growing. So maybe you keep your brand sponsorships and your followers keep going up and your money is rolling, but is that life? I don't think so. I think life is about growth. So, if I say something that may be insensitive to somebody or whatever, well, okay, cool. I'll deal with the consequences. Nothing is going to be, this ain't the 1400s. I ain't getting killed for it. So it's not that serious. If I lose a couple of subscribers or someone writes me a nasty email or nasty comments, cool, we'll deal with it. If somebody wants to give me real feedback on who I am, you're giving me a gift. You're giving me something to think about, something I can hopefully improve. And I think a lot of people get stuck into this idea of like, I am who I am. Oh, that's ridiculous. You're not who you are. Your cells are changing every day. You shed skin cells. You shed all, like you're changing. You can change. So I have always, believed in this sort of like life is a process thing. And the process is shortcut every time you refuse to be yourself. So I think you need to keep being yourself. And at some point, you need to trust that I don't have hate in my heart. So if this offends somebody, I don't intend for it to offend anybody. But you also can't be at a point where you say, well, I offended you, so deal with it. Like, no, there needs to be a reflection period on all your actions so that you can improve. But again, you shortcut that entire process by not being who you are. So if you never say what you want to say, you never get the feedback, you never grow. And then you just become stagnant. That's the worst thing ever.
Yeah. And with that soliloquy, we will end it here because I believe that is an awesome message to end with. And I'm being serious. You actually had me writing stuff down here, Rob. That wasn't true.
Oh man, I appreciate you. Subscribe to the Mike Roach Podcast. Y'all
appreciate
subscribe to the podcast. Hit like on this video, share it with a friend. And yeah, go back and watch some of Mike's other podcasts. I'll be watching it like while I'll be cooking breakfast all the time.
Appreciate
I
that,
love
man.
your podcast. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, man. And before we get out of here, lastly, tell everybody where we can find you on social media, YouTube, everywhere as well.
Yeah, you can find me 2 times a week on Players Choice. So Players Choice TV. We do good work there. Basketball debates. If you like barbershop debates, if you like people sometimes yelling over each other a little bit, you like, you want to get back to that, you listen to us 3 hours. I'm on two to three times a week at 11 a.m. and also on my channel, Pensare Basketball. I will also hopefully at some point be covering the Spurs this year as well. So more details to come on that. So busy. What a gift, man. What a gift. If I could tell, if I could tell 12-year-old me that like the majority of my income would come from basketball, like, my God, wow. I'd be so happy. So
that's a beautiful thing, man.
It's great. Yeah.
Appreciate you. Thanks a lot, Rob. Let's do this again soon, man.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. Bye-bye.